Hey everyone, we've got another episode of BrainDead for you, another after show, episode 107, right now.
You're tuning into the destination for TV superfan discussion, AFTERBUZZ TV. And now, let the buzz begin.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of BrainDead here at AFTERBUZZ TV. The power of euphemism, how torture became a matter of debate in American politics. Well, guys, it's another week. We had a crazy one last week.
Yes.
Truly. This one was a little bit more, little bit less. I shouldn't say. It was still a good episode, but we didn't have the tense nature of the last episode in this one. What were your overall thoughts?
Of this episode?
What did you think?
The Kings did something that they've done in the past with The Good Wife. They literally picked up right where we left off. Mm-hmm. So it's one of the few times I think that they're pretty good about it where you get to see it in a good way. You know, there's so many times you see the moment before and you're like, dude, we just watched that. You watched the show, but in this particular case, getting to hear Laurel kind of start that conversation with Gareth again and get his reaction again and then satisfy the hook that they left us on last week by getting the rest of the conversation, just instantly was intrigued and a little stressed out. This episode stressed me out watching it.
Yeah, to me, I liked how it opened up with where they left off because it just sort of set the tone for the entire episode, and I think it made total sense. Like you say, they used to do that with The Good Wife all the time, and it really worked here because the whole episode is sort of Gareth sort of being in the background, seeing all these things and putting the things together. So I really liked that it was really a lot of Gustav and Rochelle, which are just adorable.
I agree.
It's a good match.
And then to me, for Kurt Fuller to show up and possibly torture Laurel, and this episode really should have been to torture or not to torture.
Right?
Right.
The title that we got, not quite that. But I do question, because we were left off, as you mentioned, with a nice cliffhanger. And I felt that there was going to be more of a bomb drop when Gareth learned that she believes that these bugs are infecting people around DC. Were you a little turned off by the fact that there wasn't much of a reaction from him? It was more of an analytical approach, taking everything in. Did you want some kind of reaction from him? I didn't feel like we got anything from him. And I wanted that. I wanted him to either trust Laurel in the way that I feel like he has throughout this series, or immediately deny her. But is that not his character to take the more analytical approach?
Yeah, I think it was very in character, because I have to say, if it was me too, which I would be thinking the same thing, like, I don't want to hurt this person's feelings by being like, oh no, being dismissive, because also his opinion of her is that she's very smart and knows what she's talking about. So of course he's questioning it because it's insane, but at the same time he knows her, so he's not really sure what to think.
Right.
And as far as not getting a reaction specifically from him, like you don't feel satisfied, like you got what you wanted, didn't cross my mind.
Okay.
But I will say, towards the end of the episode, when he sees everybody hugging Laurel and he sees Gustav and Rochelle at the vote, and then he sees them immediately at Laurel's office, he had that look, they give him a moment on the camera and it's like he's satisfied, like he knows he did the right thing. And for me, I feel like the fact that he 100% went against what he's on Red's staff, 100% was going against what Red would have him do to help Luke get Laurel safe and just trusting that maybe she isn't safe. I feel like that was his reaction, was trust first and like analyze later, because he didn't have to be the sound like voice of reason to Luke. He could have said, Rochelle, Gustav, you're on your own, you know what I mean, to I guess like convince him that they have Laurel, or to, because I feel like if they had gone in, Luke would have just kind of like brushed him off. I don't think he would have taken it so seriously. Like, if you don't know where Laurel is right now and you can't get her on the phone or get her in person, then you need to find out if she's with the FBI.
Sure. I guess especially after the fact that or at least where I was coming from, is that when she made the prediction that You Might Think by the Cars was playing on that gentleman's iPod, I felt like there was going to be more of a trusting nature, like, okay, you're right, this is a little peculiar, and I have noticed this over the past 6 episodes, that people are acting a little strange, especially my boss, who happens to call a moment later, asking about the exploding heads. And he calls in Mike the intern, which, did we have a bad feeling for Mike right off the start? I know I did.
I know. I see this poor kid, and I'm like, something bad is going to happen to him.
Well, immediately, so the queen bee, or at least we'll call it the queen bee, crawls out of Red's head. What did you make of that as it happened? Because he wasn't the first individual that we saw infected by the bugs. However, I do think that he at least is the most visible, prominent individual who does have that.
Yeah, definitely the most influential with his position. And so I feel that's why he's got the queen bee, as you say, or, you know, and I love now that they fly. I mean, there are some ants who do have, you know, certain capabilities, but that was a new development.
Yeah.
I didn't take it to be the queen bee. I took it to be something in his head had evolved. That it's a matter of time. That would be something that multiple people could potentially have, and that at first I was like, oh, good, you know, he's going she comes out, or he, you know, we don't know at first. Just this bug kind of crawls out of his ear and down his arm, and you just see his hand to the food plate. And I'm kind of like, he's going to freak out. You know, like, this is going to be one of those moments where maybe you realize you have something, but you don't know how to fight it. And so you kind of have the Stacy situation. But obviously that was very much not the case. He 100% knew. It was like he does this every day at snack time.
Right.
You know what I mean?
That was interesting. I'm with you. I was a little perplexed by the fact that he was self-aware of the fact that he had these bugs in his brain and it is working in tandem with him. And that it's almost the voice. But I still do believe that it is a queen bee in the respect that, hell, it actually hatched eggs in the cherry blossom. And so I feel like it has that role, but whether or not it is the top queen bee of all of them, who knows?
I mean, and maybe it is because you guys saying that makes me think, oh, well, maybe it is kind of the same hierarchy where there's going to be the one more leader type. But if she can come and go, it's who's to say she couldn't rotate or move, between, you know, if she is the one and only. But I just feel like, I don't know, there's so many of them for her, and yes, she hatched a lot. There were a lot, but it seems like they're growing faster than one queen could put out there.
I actually feel like it's pretty good special effects for broadcast TV too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I've been pretty satisfied throughout, I'd have to say. Just on a side note.
A little plug for the
for the CBS network.
The guys behind the scene, yeah.
So Red then, as Mike the intern walks on up, he feels his head before he had given him the cherry blossoms to, as we can assume, find out whether or not he is infected or not. What did you make of that as a means of figuring out if he's got half a brain? I thought that was peculiar because everything that Gustav and Rochelle are discovering is that these bugs are able to communicate with one another, and so for him to do that, I just felt was a little bizarre. If it was just simply just a throw-in, I don't know.
I think that he was trying to make sure there was going to be some stuff to splatter. He knew 100% that he was having Mike the intern come to, because
he is on the FBI. He's on the phone with the FBI.
The head of the FBI isn't willing to do what he wants, and so he says, well, I gotta blow somebody's head up on his face and make him really feel terrorism.
Yeah.
And so I think he called Mike in 100% knowing your head's on a platter.
Did you expect it to happen?
To me, yeah, I knew something bad was going to happen to Mike, but yeah, when they're talking about wanting something to happen, it's like, who do you make do stuff? The intern.
Yeah.
So he's like, all right, we'll just explode his head. He's expendable.
Now, the most unrealistic moment of the scene is in my opinion, is the fact that he hands on over a bouquet of cherry blossoms and expects the intern to take them home and keep them.
Yeah.
I'm thinking he's going to destroy them and toss them in the trash on the way home.
Yeah, it's like, that's such a weird request. Like, here, take these cherry blossoms home to keep in your apartment. Like, yeah. Like, what do you do with that?
Some 19-year-old kid, I don't expect him to keep those cherry blossoms.
Really? It's kind of like a mixed thing because it's one of those where you're an intern working for a U.S. senator.
Uh-huh.
Most people that get that sort of a position, they're not the kind of person. Oh, I guess like with where you work, if the CEO came to you and said, "Hey, I need you to hold on to these flowers, take them home with you tonight," are you going to throw them out on your way out the door?
Yeah. No,
Probably not.
You
know,
have a
so
point.
for him in his role versus the hierarchy of the senator's kind of the cream of the crop for what he wants to do. You know, what if he asks for those flowers back sometime? You know, what if you don't have them anymore? But I do get what you're saying, because had it been a female intern, I feel like it wouldn't have seemed as weird.
Yeah.
I don't know that that's
I'm putting myself
a
in
good
that
thing
perspective.
to say or think, but...
If it was a female intern, it could have been seen as sexual harassment, but at the same time, a little less weird than giving a male intern some cherry blossoms.
You know, so that's why, I mean, I hate to say, like, it seems like it would be more appropriate to give it to a girl, but I think it's just because traditionally men give women flowers, and so for a woman to receive flowers in any situation isn't going to seem as weird as a man receiving flowers. Even though I think there's men out there that like flowers.
You know, maybe Red was tapping in the bathroom stall. Right away.
No.
Something would happen.
We're not
I don't
going
think
there,
so.
Lucretia. But, all right, so Mike's head explodes. The FBI director is now aware, or at least more personally involved, in the fact that there are exploding heads that are taking place across the country, or at least D.C. So sends Mr. Cornish, an FBI agent, on over to Laurel's office, and though he's acting like a constituent at the time, presents her with some disposable handcuffs and takes her in for questioning. So she's then questioned by a psychiatrist, then a doctor, and when they start talking about open hand slapping and then closed fist punching, what was going through your mind at that point in time?
I was like, oh, this is about to get really dark here. Like, and, you know, but I honestly didn't see them crossing that line just because of the Kings being behind this. And, you know, I could have seen a slap, but over that, I was like, they're not going to show much. And I don't think they would do this to their main protagonist. But then they did put bugs in her ear, so who knows?
Right. The first thing kind of, she had the handcuffs, but I'm thinking, okay, how come she had to get all the way from her office, or, you know, where she meets the constituents, out to his car or van or whatever.
Right.
How does that happen with no alarm?
I was thinking the same thing. I guess he asked that question. All right, which hallway can we go down?
But I mean, you're still in a building with
large
people,
office building.
You know what I mean? And in the parking lot, I can't imagine there's nobody coming and going.
I'll just assume he's an
senators
FBI
work.
agent and he knows the way. You know, he's skilled enough in that art form of.
But I mean, he can't control what Laurel says. She could be screaming down the hall.
True.
Like, it's not like it's a soundproof building, in that sense. So that kind of had me thrown up. But when he started asking about that, I mean, I 100% knew that he was talking about torture.
Oh yeah.
And, you know what I mean? And figuring out, okay, how far can we go in, or I guess interrogation. I guess I wouldn't say torture specifically, until later on when they brought up this whole appendix Q.
Agreed. So, in that moment, though, what did you think of Laurel's personal knowledge of her own torture rights, per se? Because I was surprised that she was able to come up with that information, that both chairs of the intelligence committees needed to have approval over this type of action before she is actually able to go through with this torture.
Yeah, that was very interesting. Yeah.
So two things. If I remember right, they said something about that to her, that they had the approval of the two intelligence chairs. And because her brother is newly one of those chairs, I think that's why she said, wait a second.
No, you don't.
Obviously, my brother wouldn't have approved this if he knew it was me.
Right.
So I don't think she knew until they said, no, we have the approval of the two chairs of the Intelligence Committee. And thankfully, because it's her brother, she knew that it wasn't his approval.
Good point.
And she may
that.
not have known that they had to get the new ones and was just kind of saying what she had to say to try to get to buy time or anything. So, which I also thought was interesting because she starts to talk about the bugs. You know, of course we see Anthony, and I was slow to it because when they said they were going to make him interrogate, and he goes, well, you know, when she sees me, or you know, she's going to tell you guys that I assaulted her, but she's lying.
Yeah.
It did not click with me that he was talking about previously. I thought he was saying, when the interrogation is over, she's going to tell you I assaulted her in the interrogation room. You know, like,
right.
It was going to happen, and that's what she would say. Not the second she sees me, she's going to say, he can't interrogate me, he assaulted me.
And he has bugs in his ear.
Yeah.
It's sad to watch Anthony's character now because I really enjoyed his character before he was infected. And at this point in time, he's long gone.
He had to go. Otherwise, there couldn't be, what is it?
But that love triangle did not last long enough in the
Gareth.
show.
It was, what, an episode or two?
It might have been just an episode or two.
Oh, I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
The love story is like so secondary or thirdary. Not that that's a word, but.
And didn't you love how Luke and Laurel both almost made a General Hospital Freudian slip there, but how Luke and Laurel both thought about just stalling with just like telling these stories? It's so cute how they both use the same tactic.
Good catch on that. So we get to that point where Senator Healy and Red Wheatus are called into an emergency meeting because they are the two committee chairs, so they have to approve this Appendix Q questioning protocol. And the FBI director is citing this ticking clock scenario, which I have never heard before, but at least it has some sort of sense of urgency. And Senator he's not buying it. Luke's not buying it at first. Did you think that he was going to sign that document? Because I was surprised that he, at that point in time, was satisfied with the answers that he was given. I guess that's his character up to this point. But there have been shining light moments where when he truly sees a questionable situation, he will prolongate it.
Well, yeah, I think with Luke's character is he does the right thing most of the time, just sometimes for the wrong reasons. But yeah, I don't think he would have ever advocated torture. And Starman934 brings up a good point in the chat, just rewinding a little bit. Does anyone believe Anthony when he said he was the only one infected?
I do. I don't think he would have need to lie in that situation.
I don't think so.
I think it was a sad commentary, however accurate, I don't know, on the fact that sometimes we as Americans, or maybe government employees, I don't know the specific commentary being made, sometimes we get a little too narrow-minded or a little bit too focused on just getting the job done, and we don't really look at the big picture, or we don't really take the time to use our like personal moral compass to decide if what we're doing is really ethical or moral to our own standards. You know, we kind of say, well, it's my job to do X, Y, or Z, so even if I don't agree with it, it's my job, so I'm going to do it anyways.
Yeah, because that's certainly how I felt about Kurt Fuller's character, J.K. Cornish, is I feel like he was only doing that because it was his job. I don't think he was infected or anyone in the FBI other than Anthony. I feel like he was genuine in that because to me it would almost seem to his benefit to have more people infected there.
So I feel like for him, the way that the bugs communicate or however that is, that, you know, divide and conquer. And I feel like if they felt like he was losing the battle in the team of people working on this whole situation with Laurel, they probably either would have infected one of them or brought in someone else from another department that abruptly and suddenly is now, you know, on the team because they're infected, and it's going to be strength in numbers at that point. But I don't think, at least for now, it was necessary. You know, they were all doing what they were supposed to do, except the one guy that stayed on the phone with Luke and let him know by not telling him anything
Right.
that in fact they had Laurel.
it has been the commentary throughout this show, in that this show is trying to make us realize how we're not oftentimes thinking with our hearts, and we're just letting things happen in DC without really questioning our own moral character. I think that's what this series has done a good job of doing, just like we saw with that one scene a couple of episodes ago where you had the veteran who needed this research in order to live, and how Red was politicizing the whole situation rather than just doing the right thing. And I think that has been a commentary throughout this series to this point. To go along with the interrogation, you had the situation where Laurel knew that Anthony's brain is eaten by the bugs, but she was trying to say aloud, knowing that she was being videotaped and listened by others, that she's saying, this guy's got half of his brain eaten by bugs. She's vocalizing it so that either they think that she's crazy or she's truly trying to voice that opinion. I think that she was consciously trying to seem psychotic so that they wouldn't torture her. Was that what you were getting as well?
To me,
that she's smart enough? Because I feel like she's got enough wit to realize that.
Yeah, I think that there were elements of both. I feel like she thought either way it was going to come out well. Either they're going to think she's crazy and just not listen to a word she say, don't bother torturing her, or they might have already had some intel on what was going on and that they would listen. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think, I didn't get anything about her being aware that they wouldn't torture her if she sounded crazy. I thought it was 100% just she was trying to, as kind of a last resort, just this is the only thing I have is to tell the truth at this point. And she may have thought she was going to sound crazy, knowing that that's what a lot of people's reaction is when you talk about bugs and heads and brains being half-eaten. But I don't think that she knew that you have to be considered mentally stable to be able to be tortured.
Right. To go along with the...
I don't know, though.
I'm 50-50 too. I guess the only defense in the theory is simply that when she did bring it up, the psychologist who was watching brought it up. He simply said, if she is mentally incapable of taking these tests, then we're not going to get anything. But you also saw in that whole interaction, you saw the FBI director who was really not taking any bit of notice, just thinking, whatever, we're going to try this anyway.
I have a job to do.
Just like, yeah, exactly. I have a job to do. Just like we saw back in the early 2000s when waterboarding was brought to our attention. It might not have any kind of effectiveness, but we're still going to do it anyway because it could work.
Right, and I 100% don't think that it was an accident that was what was brought up in the vote.
Oh, right. Yeah. Oh, totally intentional. So we get to that committee hearing, and Gareth slips Luke a note. So it was the first sign that Luke was going against his own boss, trying to do the right thing. What did you take notice of that?
Yeah, I really have liked Gareth's character from the beginning, but this shows that, he is willing to do the right thing, even if it could cost him his job, or his life. I mean, you see what Red did to poor Mike the intern.
Right.
Yeah.
So he slips him the note regarding controlled immersion, and that brings a line of questioning that causes Red to go off, and so he gets into a heated debate with Luke, and that ends up stalling the vote. And then suddenly this Chuck Hodges guy disappears from the vote area, so we are left to just wait it out for a moment in time. But what did you think about, they brought back the old fling that Gareth had with the blonde news reporter?
Yes, I was almost going to ask you when we were watching the episode if that was her or not.
What did you think of her getting shushed on her own television show? And she was left speechless, too.
That was hilarious, in my opinion. I wish that I could see that on real live TV. That was so funny. It was like, shh, shh. Every time she tried to say something.
Oh, God.
And it was just a face.
Show. This is why we don't have guests, so that would not happen. No, just kidding.
We wouldn't get shushed.
No, we wouldn't get shushed. We would hold our own. But we've got Gustav and Rochelle on the sidelines, but they're doing a cool thing.
Oh, I love them, yeah.
So they're broadcasting these signals.
This is probably, I think, the best part of the episode.
Agreed. Their
and
interaction is
the most
fantastic.
forward moving of the plot with the bugs. Well, I guess the red queen lady, little lady he calls her,
And
is also
the very ending,
forward-moving.
in the committee vote, I think that's going to send at least ripples amongst the inner
right.
Yeah.
Big episode.
Yeah, so they're deciphering these signals, words, and the first word that they signaled out, which Rochelle put Gustav in his place by actually showing a little bit more intelligence in that moment, saying, oh, let's try one single word and let's see what can happen.
Well, and before that, it was her idea, just saying, wait a second. If you've recorded the message, obviously that message was put out on the frequency. Why don't we put it out like we're the message giver, like we're infected? And I love their interaction when they found one, the jogger.
Yeah.
Because they lost the guy they were following. And furthermore, that they follow him and they are getting somewhere, which is really just right back where they started.
Right.
Yeah, I just love.
I appreciated that.
I love that they're like, oh no, check out the jogger, because I'm like, yeah, exactly. People who run for fun, they're weird. They're infected by these bugs.
Well, so they get reactions from the jogger and then Scarlet. And bizarre reactions they were. What did you actually make of what that word means? Is it more of a like an SOS type signal where it just kind of stops you in your tracks and makes them on the same frequency? It almost disables the person and puts them into a state where they no longer are themselves.
See, I feel like, the wording or the message legitimately had something to do with walking into a wall. Because if they just shut them down, the people wouldn't have gotten out of the senators wouldn't have gotten out of their seats and gone and over walked into a wall.
So in essence, it makes them brain dead.
But I mean, they could just be brain dead sitting there. You know what I mean? Like it's specific. The specific action is go walk.
I guess I'm just saying, like, would it almost
stop.
shut down the other part of their brain?
Well, to me, it's just, when you think about it, because I like to put it in the terms of that these are ants, and these function very similar to the way that ants on this earth in real life function, is frequencies can control ants' trajectories, like how they move and things like that. Like certain frequencies they react. Yes.
Okay.
Certain frequencies they react to. I didn't feel like it was really so much an actual message or words, but it was just the frequencies, show them how to move. That's how ants can sort of be trained by people.
Then how come they were all like at different walls? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because they were all doing the same thing, but they weren't all doing it in the same direction, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing, is they maybe took that idea and just because of, obviously instead of making people march, like, say,
we're just thinking too hard.
And that's why I'm like...
you asked a question you shouldn't have asked.
I know, it's true.
Yeah, because to me, it's just having them do the same action versus, like, an actual trajectory. But they took that idea of actual ants.
Right, well, and that's what I mean. It was a specific message to walk into a wall. I mean, I don't know what the actual message was, but that's obviously what the result was. Same with the hands up thing.
Right.
Which was brilliant.
This
is why I love the Kings as writers.
So Gustav comes on in and he disrupts the vote. It was a last-ditch effort to save Laurel, which Gustav was totally unaware of. But again, he does the job. He saves the day for Laurel.
Did either of you, as soon as Scarlet did that, did it come to mind that this could skew the vote?
Yeah, I thought so.
You did?
Whenever the hands went up, I'm like, okay, that's where they're headed next. But I really didn't expect them just to sort of follow that guy, and that happened. But yeah, I was like, yeah, they don't know that the vote's going on, so that's the only way they could have got there,
Good call. No, I did not think of it at first.
No, me neither. And I liked that they had those people voting twice. They didn't just have people voting. They didn't wait to get the arms only for the no. Although I guess they couldn't, because if they had the majority for yes, they had to get those people to vote both times, confusing and negating the vote and its capacity.
Well, and to me, it also did the way of sort of showing the public, since this is on live TV and stuff like that, about what's going on. These people are clearly out of their minds.
Oh, yeah.
Well, and so that was the other interesting thing for Chuck Hodges to have removed himself from the vote, because since it was airing, he had to vote for it, which he didn't want to do, and so he removed himself. But I thought it was interesting because we see that Laurel and Luke's dad is infected, yet he brought him back for Luke.
Right.
Yeah, to me, it feels like maybe they're not completely out of their minds yet. They still have part of their...
They being, who do you mean?
Chuck Hodges, as well as his friend who brought him. Like, they don't seem to be, like, as far gone as, say, Red, who is clearly going towards this agenda. Like, Chuck and their father seem to have some sort of stillness of who they were, which as opposed to the other people.
I don't think Chuck is infected.
Yeah, I don't think he was either, because it didn't really show. But yeah, to me, both of them seem to have at least somewhat, like, either, like with their dad, if he's infected, it's new, because he still tried to protect his daughter.
Yeah, the dad moment was interesting.
Yeah.
I was a little thrown off by that. But we'll see. We'll see in the next episode, hopefully, whether or not he is going to play a bigger role in that regard. And whether or not him being affected is going to sabotage, whether it be Luke's career, Laurel in general. It's funny that we were talking... When we were talking about the double hands going up, I actually had in my notes when we were watching it, I was going to talk about how Scarlett, when she did throw her arms up, I thought that was just an odd, bizarre thing. So the fact that it was brought up later on, that moment in time, I thought it was just an actor's choice to kind of do something bizarre.
Oh, like the note was not put your hands up, the note was... Do something. Cause a scene.
Exactly,
yeah.
cause a scene. Or just in her way, just like become disabled. That's why I guess I asked that question earlier of what did you think of that? So that's where my mind was at.
Right.
And the fact that ended up playing a role.
The message for why they walk into a wall, I don't know. And I wouldn't have thought that was it, just from the guy on the stairs, the jogger that they followed. But when that's what all of the senators were then also doing, the interesting thing is, it didn't really give us any insight to it, framing wise, but was there anybody in the media? Did anybody else in the room start doing it?
Did not see it.
Or was it only the senators? Because it's hard to believe in a room with that many people and the camera, you know what I mean?
Right.
There's got to be people in the media, because I think that not Gareth's friend in the media, the lady that was shushing her is infected.
Oh, yeah, she's totally
You know what I mean?
infected.
And so... would anybody that was in the room also, because it's like, well, wait, it wasn't just senators then.
Well, we were mentioning, or at least in the previous episode, they were talking about when they were doing the crop fields analogy with the districts, they were mentioning how there were certain areas, certain hubs that were more... that these cherry blossom trees and these bugs were more frequently located in. And so my guess, just guessing, the senators, the lawmakers are all within that hub, and I guess the lesser people, if you will, in that regard, are going to be in the outskirts. Or I guess the less influential individuals are going to be on the outskirts. So I guess we're going to have less of that. But
it's the media. I wouldn't say they're less influential.
No. I'm not saying that, but I guess I'm just saying that we'll just assume lawmakers are making six figures or higher. They're going to be a lot wealthier. They're going to be in certain neighborhoods where these cherry blossom trees are that these news people probably won't be. Just saying. That's my personal thought on it. But after the committee meeting, you have Cornish and Laurel have an interesting little exchange. And we were talking about earlier how he was a moral compass at the end of the episode. Is that true? Did you feel that way? Because after he brought up the Louisiana story, when his car broke down, the American way that true people of this country feel that homely, caring behavior towards their fellow Americans, but when they get in masses, they aren't that way.
Yeah, to me, with his character, even in the first instance, he seemed like he was just doing his job. He didn't really want to hurt her, and that's how he started out and sort of kept throughout the episode. He's like, look, I'm just doing my duty, just like, a soldier would. And even though you may disagree with something on a moral level, it's all to protect the greater good. So, I mean, it's sort of one of those gray areas. But to me, his character seemed pretty consistent throughout to believe that way.
See, and I felt like he was the only one I kind of, oh, he is, oh, he isn't, oh, he is, oh, he isn't, as far as being infected, because he'd say something that seemed like he had to be, and then he would tell a story like that where you're like, oh, okay, no, he's not, because I get where he's coming from, and in a lot of ways I agree with the story, because you think about, a Republican and a Democrat just simply, as friends, as neighbors, can get along, can have a great time, but the Democratic Party and the Republican Party don't work together the same way two neighbors would.
True.
You know what I mean? And, we may have, one of us is one of us is the other, like hypothetically. It's one of those things where we can sit and have a conversation or even maybe a healthy debate about it, and understand each other, because it's like, I don't think that anybody feels like, I want somebody to go hungry. I want somebody, you know what I mean? But it's as the masses, it's how you get to the results that I feel is sort of where the strong differing opinions come, because everybody wants America to be a great country. It's just a matter of how do we make that happen, that the masses kind of, as stronger voices, don't agree or don't get along the way that other people would.
It's just like the needs of the one versus the needs of the many.
Right.
It's sort of a big picture.
Yeah.
Exactly. I was going to say the same thing, in that he might be thinking from the perspective of what is for the greater good. And as he sees it from his perspective in his job, he knows that there is information, though this girl Laurel seems that she is a good person, and that she might not have this information, but it's possible that she could, and I can't take that chance for the greater good. So his own morals is telling him this girl is a trustworthy individual, but in his position, he needs to look out for everybody else.
Well, and I thought it was interesting too. He didn't seem to have a lot of emotion while at work.
Right.
It wasn't until he was dropping her off that I feel like you really saw that. Like, he was kind of almost like off duty almost. And he kind of opened up to her like, you're lucky, I've had to go through all of those things. And, he didn't use any of that information during the interrogation or during the possible exercise of these torture treatments or whatever they were calling them. So I thought that was interesting. But then he says, see you again soon, or, see you later.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, what?
I thought it was very curious that he offered her a ride to begin with in the interrogation room, and she had accepted, and I was questioning her acceptance of that offer.
Oh, really?
Well, to me, I felt like Laurel, to an extent, understood his position and understood why he was there. And I felt like that's why they seemed to be able to reason with one another anyway. They had a good rapport, and as you said, I'm just doing my job. And so I see why she trusted him, because, now that he's, it said you can't torture, he's like, okay, I'll just take you back home.
And to go along with...
I felt like it was a release of custody.
Sure. And to go along with that very thought, when he drops her off and she says, well, I'm going back to work, because now his job is done, but she's got work to do now.
Exactly. It was sort of a, passing of the baton.
Exactly. Well, it truly was a great episode. We were left with the cliffhanger that the father is, in fact, infected. Just a matter of to what extent, if there is any.
Yeah, well, and what that means as far as... I would imagine he's politically going to be in line with Luke. Are we going to see him pushing the agenda on Luke more? Or, you know what I mean? Is he going to be trying to bring certain people into Luke's fold? Is he going to try to infect Laurel and Luke?
Yeah, and to me, I feel like we're at the point where Rochelle and Gustav have noticed this, and we know that he can't be infected to the extent of Red or some of the other people because of how he tried to save Laurel and, affect change that could have been detrimental to the Bugs plan. But at the same time, it's just like, are they going to catch it in time like they did with Laurel?
But I think if his agenda aligns with Laurel and Luke, totally infected would try to save her. I don't, you know what I mean? But there's an interesting, is there some aspect of love and protectiveness that comes from being family that maybe can outmaneuver the logical side of, you know, what the bugs can do? You know, if he's infected, is there some aspect of family that somehow supersedes the bug, you know, infection?
Well, because if you do bring up the fact that the right brain is the key there, the right brain, like with sex and all these things, endorphins are released, say, when you're around your family and your happiness. So that may be a little bit protecting him, being that these are his children. But at the same time, you know, he, in theory, if he's infected, would start to be against Laurel and Gustav and Rochelle, all these people, because their whole thing is to stop this. So,
right. But he doesn't know that yet.
Not yet, but let's go into our predictions.
Ooh.
Because I think that there are a couple of moments.
Your AFTERBUZZ TV
Predictions. So, with Laurel and Luke's father, I do feel that there is going to be a moment in time where Luke is going to have to make a rash decision, because he's going to realize the changes in his own father. And I think that there are going, by drastic measure, I think he might actually have to kill his own father.
Yes, like that other Luke.
Spoilers, that's we can't talk about. No, but I truly think that could actually happen, because he's going to start doing things that are going to conflict with his own agenda, as you mentioned, and I think it's going to become very relevant, and it's going to cause a lot of conflict amongst the others. And if Luke sees Laurel threatened, as we've seen throughout, Luke's at his best when he's protecting his sister. And I think if he does have to protect Laurel, he's going to have to do what's necessary.
Yeah, I totally agree that I see that happening, is that the further and further infected, if their father does happen to succumb to it, he will go after Laurel and her friends. And I see Luke being the one to come in and protect and ultimately join their side of being against these bugs, because he seems to at least have he knows there's something going on at this point too, so he's gonna start questioning it. So, and the chat, Shark Boss 1 has a good comment here. Theoretically, they could learn more of the language, like Rochelle and Gustav were doing, and possibly just create a message saying to the ants to crawl out of your hose.
That's good.
That might be
That's interesting, yeah.
Yeah.
See, and I guess a little bit along the Shark Boss theory, I feel like there is going to be something with family or something that makes the relationship with their dad different, and almost like he's the first one, for whatever reason, that can be like aware he has them but want to fight it. And, you know, obviously more so infected than Laurel was, but somehow becomes almost like a subject of it. But then it's hard, because this other part of me, as far as predictions go for like next week, I don't think he's going to be in the episode much, because with the teaser, you see that they find someone and they like have him taped up or tied to a pole. And so her dad, I don't think the fact that he's infected is something that they know yet.
Right.
Well, I guess Gustav does, but but I don't know that really comes into play. I feel like something more pressing kind of pushes them away from that storyline and into this storyline with this
Agreed.
bug man, whatever, infected man that they kidnap, essentially.
I don't think that it will be immediate, but I do think in the near future it will have to be a turning point for Luke's character, because I think that's the only thing that can set Luke over the edge, and as you mentioned, it's going to be the only thing that gets him to do something rash and really, I guess, put him over the edge. Yeah.
See, and I feel like I totally agree that he'll do something rash, and I feel like it may be rash in the sense like, I'm going to commit political suicide and just go all in with the bug situation, and that maybe by the end of the season we see like it works.
That's
you know
possible.
what I mean? Like, it's going to look like suicide, and then by the end something happens that lets America see no, Luke was right to back this or push this agenda of figuring out what the heck is going on in our city. We'll see.
I mean, I don't know how at any point in time he doesn't realize that Red is infected in the way that he's seen Red function.
Who doesn't realize?
Luke.
To me, Luke probably is just
But he
like,
hasn't bought
that
into it
crazy
yet.
Republican.
He hasn't bought into it.
Yeah, Luke hasn't bought
still,
into it yet because
at some point in time.
there's a lot of people. Scarlet, hello, like
Yeah,
there's a lot
that's
of people.
true.
he would
I
say.
love
That was the
Shark
big
Boss One's idea here. They should host a Cars concert to draw everyone there.
Yes, that's brilliant.
That is.
Well, maybe that will happen.
Well, we have a lot to look forward to on next week's episode. Courtney, tell us how they can find you on social media.
You can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Cohen, Couhen.
And I'm Lacretia Lyon, so you can always find me at LACRETIALYON anywhere on the internet, since there is only one.
And I am Kevin Ellis. You can find me on Twitter at @TheKevinEllis or on Instagram at KevinEllis25. Everybody, thanks for joining us this week on AfterBuzz TV's BrainDead. You can find us on SoundCloud, iTunes, YouTube all week long. We will be here next Sunday night as well for episode 108. Thanks for joining us, ladies, and we will see you guys next week.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.